now in year number 4. It's a Yank on the Footy with Craig Wessels. Let's all sit back and enjoy a chat about the greatest game on the face of the earth. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 244 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels, coming to you from Sandusky, Ohio, and thanks for giving the episode a listen. In this episode, the third in my series on why I truly believe American NFL fans would love the AFL, I'm going to be joined in a moment by Reese Knight from the Daz Talks Footy YouTube channel, as well as he is the host of the NFL Down Under podcast, and very knowledgeable young man, great source to talk to about this topic because he has toes dipped in both the NFL and the AFL camps. So I'm really looking forward to bringing our conversation to you. Now, today's club of the episode are the Pines Pythons Football Club. And the club was founded back in 1964. And it's kind of interesting, as I was reading up on the history of the club on their website, it was part of a large grouping of clubs that included cricket and softball and gymnastics and things like that were designed to help to provide sporting activities for residents of the Pines Forest Housing Estate near Frankston. And when I looked at their website, absolutely wonderful website. Just really, really love the layout of it. And if you want to learn about the history of this club, if you happen to be in this area, or if you're just interested in local footy, this is a very unique site because as you scroll through the sections or the chunks, if you will, of their history tab, the tab where they're looking at the history of their club, you scroll through and it just keeps loading more and more and dozens and dozens and dozens of photos from that era with the names of the people and the events and that sort of thing attached to them. It's a really neat layout. I haven't seen anything like that looking at any of the other clubs. And I ran across a story on there reading about a gentleman by the name of Gordon Hendry, who, I'll be honest, I don't know if he still plays with them or not, but the story was on him at the age of 47. And best I can tell, this was about 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, where he had just played his 500th game for the Pythons. And he was still lining up as the number one ruck on their club's reserve side. So he was making an impact in the organization, playing with players that were, 30 years younger than he was. Now, the under-19s, the reserves, and the seniors have a practice match coming up on the 11th of March against the Eltham Panthers. And based upon their Instagram page, they did not have a location for that yet. So if you are interested in catching a practice match in that area, up around the Frankston area, keep an eye on their website or their Instagram page, or probably their Facebook page, I would imagine as well, and see where they tell us that game is going to be, those games are going to be played. And I love the logo. It's just a very fierce-looking snake. It's just really striking. The color combination is very unique as well. You don't see a lot of red and green together. I do want to wish the Pythons the absolute best going forward in 2023. So let's go ahead without any further ado and jump into my chat with Reese Knight. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another one of my episodes where we are trying to figure out how can the AFL find their way into the United States and break down the door and sell what I think is the greatest game on the planet to my fellow Yanks. And I am joined by a gentleman here who is very busy in the communication industry, if you will. He hosts a podcast, a YouTube channel, dealing with both footy and with the NFL. And I am absolutely thrilled to be welcoming Reese Knight to the podcast. Reese, thanks for coming on this morning, sir.
No, genuine pleasure. I appreciate you taking some time out to have a chat, mate. So I'm looking forward to it with our time zones. I know it's getting quite late where you are, so I'm looking forward to this in a big, big way. And if you don't mind, can I grab that intro off you at the end of the interview? I might need to use that across a couple of my platforms, speaking about me that kindly. I appreciate that.
You certainly can. I'll splice that off and make a copy of it for you and send it off to you. And I'll maybe have you reciprocate at the end of this, and then I'll tag it on the front of that, and it'll just we'll just kind of be. Do they play leapfrog in Australia? Do they call it that?
It's yeah, they do.
Oh, okay.
Not for a while, but
Well, no,
geez,
I don't think, yeah, but it's just, you're right. I don't plan on doing that either because, I'm not quite ready for a new hip yet, but, I'm probably a lot closer to that sort of thing than a lot of people who are listening. So, you host the NFL podcast, NFL Down Under, but then you also host Daz Talks Footy on YouTube. So, where did Daz come from? Because you challenged me to say it ain't where you think, and I'll be honest, I hadn't formulated an idea yet, but some people might be thinking about it. If you want to pause here for a couple seconds and think about where Daz would have come from, I don't know if he tried to sneak across the the demilitarized zone between South and North Korea, and he got part of his M shot off and only got left with the A there. I don't know, but maybe that's probably not it. So why don't you go ahead and tell us?
No, so it was simple as in year 10 or 10th grade, I should say, English. Our English teacher at the time said that as a part of Australian culture, everyone needs a nickname. So this was their belief. And this is something that my dad instrumented in me as well. As a part of the culture, a part of bonding, everyone needs a nickname. And I hadn't really had a nickname. The name Reese, especially as it's spelled R-H-Y-S, doesn't really open itself up to a lot of nicknames there based off someone's name. Anyway, a couple of days later, the Facebook account that I'd had, and keep in mind here, I'm 14, so at that point in time, social media is everything to a kid at that time, got hacked at that point. And let's just say instead of me posting really badly spelled football takes, turned into more, let's say, of an adults-only content that was not suitable for a 14-year-old kid. So that wasn't me doing that. So I then had to change and create a whole new one. And instead of just doing my name, I also included my middle name, which is Darren. And now people can sort of see where they're going with this. And, it's not the most common of middle names. When we get to the nickname part of the English class, my mate at the time, Smithy, there you go, another nickname, and he's going to come up a few times as we keep talking down the line. Asked where Darren came from as a middle name. It's my dad's name. So he then became Daz Senior and me Daz Junior. In that point, that lasted about 2 days. It became Daz. And then from there, it just became everyone that I was talking sport with just became Daz. So when it was the time that the YouTube channel came up, I thought to myself, let's lean into the name, and ergo Daz Talks Footy was born. So shout out to Smithy, as I'll probably have to do a few times here, which is no skin off my nose, for creating the empire, if you will.
Good deal. Good deal. So how did you, I understand how I think I can, infer how you became a footy fan simply because of where you happen to be right now. But how did you become an NFL fan?
Yeah, well, we get to talk about Smithy again, who got indoctrinated into the NFL via the other contributor on NFL Down Under, the great man Teed himself. Again, another nickname. Can you spot the theme here? So Teed introduced Smithy to the NFL. Smithy got into college ball, and then he decided wherever Cam Newton was going to be drafted, he would then barrack for. So it worked out really well for him as a Panthers fan really early. And then since then, it went absolutely nowhere. And then, he did the same thing to me. He was like, mate, I know what you're like as a footy fan. I know that you're a nuffy, obsessed with sport. This is something you should really get into. I remember watching a game on my own. I can't remember who was playing. Didn't really get into it. And then it was just, all right, I watched a little bit more, fell in love with the Dolphins. Again, that's worked out really well for me so far in the 5 years I've been following the game. And it's just kind of built from there. And, when we decided to sit down and do a podcast, this being Smithy and I, it was, my obsession with footy was growing and growing from a kid. I hadn't really latched onto anything sport-wise this much. I'm a fan of the NBA as well, but much more casually. Whereas the NFL became a really quick obsession for me because it became, in my head, whether this makes sense or not is probably up to the listeners, it became almost like human chess. It's just a move, and the back and forth was, I think, insanely addictive to me. And then from there, I was learning about the game on the fly. When we recorded our first episode, which looks and sounds terrible, we were sharing a mic. It was in my parents' my dad had built a backyard, rumpus room out the back. It was the most echoey sound. It sounds terrible, but I reckon I knew a dozen player names
Mm-hmm.
and probably 6 positions on the field. And then it's just, the podcast just accelerated my appreciation and love of the game. And here we are. I have more NFL jerseys than I do AFL ones, and I am so looking forward to the Super Bowl, even though my Finns aren't in it, which is a shame.
Well, man, my Browns just missed out this year. Well, when you mentioned that you watched a game that you didn't take a whole lot of interest in, and I'm thinking it had to be the Browns playing. It had to be,
I wish I could go back and
Yes.
find it, but it escapes me. The first game that I remember sitting down and getting addicted to, and I'm a big believer in this in footy as well, is you need a good game. If the first time you get introduced to it is a stinker, which is why I think going back to history would be a good thing, because you can pick and choose. But the first game that I remember fully loving was the Dolphins and the Raiders, where Ryan Fitzpatrick got hit in the face. He got face masked and still found the receiver, who I can't actually think of who it was.
Was Jarvis Landry still with them at that time?
Yes, I think it was Landry, actually.
Okay.
And then from there, Jason Sanders kicks the field goal, and I went ballistic. And then from there, I was fully hooked. But yeah, that previous first game.
So was Fitzpatrick, by the way. Yeah,
absolutely.
He certainly was as well there. Yeah, but it sounds, in a way, it sounds an awful lot like how I came about following footy, because it's only been since about 2016 for me following footy, and here it is just 7 years later, and I'm in. I'm in my 4th year of doing the podcast. I didn't jump in as early as you did. So, and which I applaud you for that. And maybe that is, maybe that is your youthful exuberance doing that. And as opposed to, in my case, people looking at me going, wait a minute, you're old. What are you doing? You don't do that. And now I've gone from recording it, in the desk in the back corner of my family room to where I've converted. I'm in a walk-in closet in an empty bedroom that I've converted into the room that I record in. So I literally do all of my schoolwork in here as well. So this is where I grade my papers and such at this desk now as well. So I've got old clothes and towels and some old shirts on the shelves here as sound dampening equipment. And then all of my cats stuff. Well, most of my cat stuff here as well. So it was nice that they won a premiership this year, so I could get some new things to put up behind here. But
yeah, the new merch. I know this is blasphemy as a Hawthorn supporter, but I do have to say I do admire the way that you've got your room set up there at the moment. I'll forgive the team just for a moment, but I mean that passion's fantastic.
It's okay. And as I was telling you, I mean, I love I love the game. I mean, of course, I want to see the Cats win each week, and then I want to watch 8 other great games.
Oh yeah. I'm with you. Especially in content creation, that's all you can ask for. I remember Geelong North last year, the 100 and whatever point smacking that it was, and I was just like, how do you make content out of that? It's just North weren't going that well at the moment. The Cats dominated, and then you move on from there. So I'm an admirer of a good game. Maybe not as much as my team, but I can sit and appreciate good games in any sport, which I think is important if you're going to be in the content creation space, because you've got to enjoy the good, the bad, and work your way through the ugly at times.
So how have you? And I know there's, I think, maybe one other NFL podcast out of Australia that I know of, and there may be others that I just haven't figured out yet. But how have you done as far as gaining traction with your fellow Australians, and have you caught hold of American listeners who are, it's kind of an inverse of my situation, who are like, wait a minute, this guy doesn't sound like us, but he's talking about our game?
Yeah, well, in terms of, we had a podcast sharing platform really early days where fans could ask us questions, so send questions through on the podcast sharing platform, which was really great. And we were getting California, New York, and it was just blowing us away. I mean, because at the end of the day, we were just 3 idiots from Melbourne talking into our laptop cameras, just shooting the breeze, as it were, about a game that we love, which just blew us away. So yeah, in terms of marketing and all those things, we've just done it for fun. It's not something that we suspect is going to gain, 10,000 downloads an episode and everyone can get around us. I think from the people that have told us that they really enjoy what we do, is just the fact that we treat it as three mates having a chat. And, we've got a run sheet with topics and all those sorts of things, but I think people can appreciate the fact that it's three mates who talk about the game, do their best at predicting things. We take the mickey out of each other, and then there's NFL content in there as well, which I think having that balance is a really good thing, in a way that I think most Australians can get around the NFL, because it's quite, American sports media, and I consume quite a bit of it, is quite intense and in your face and quite.
Yes, it is.
I think. Yeah, and I think that's quite intimidating maybe for Australians to leap into. So I think if you've got that balance, the best person to tell Australians about other sport would be an Australian. The best probably people to talk about Americans about footy would be an American, which is why I think you're doing a fantastic job. I do believe that, and if you can get the outside sources in that can reiterate the message, then hopefully we can create something great.
So you're basically saying that the American sports media, that everybody is cane corns?
That's. I mean,
is that it? I mean, because he's I think, in just in terms of the ones that I have listened to, he seems to be the one that is that he reminds me an awful lot of the people in the American sports media. And I'll be honest with you, I listen to much more of the sports media in your country than I do here anymore, because I mean, I'm not a hockey fan. I don't follow the NBA. I used to be a baseball fan, but I haven't watched baseball in over 3 years now. And I'll watch the Browns, and I'll watch the Ohio State Buckeyes and the U.S. Naval Academy's football teams play. But I'm not watching all of the other games because I'm so involved with footy. I mean, footy is it's kind of consumed me, if you will. So, I mean, I love listening to as many different, footy podcasts and viewpoints and such to just learn as much as I can about the game.
Yeah, I think, well, you can say it. Kane is our Colin Cowherd, and that's fine. The radio station that he works for tried really, really hard to get Colin on the show to have a chat. I think, love or hate Kane, and people are very much on both ends of that spectrum.
Right.
I enjoy him because I think he genuinely believes everything that he says, but he also knows that social media is his friend, and I think he's probably the first Australian football media person that understands that even if people hating him is okay, because it'll still get traction, and that's why he's such a high ticket in terms of media presence. So I think it's quite clever the way that he does things, and he's able to take the mickey at times, and he says the ridiculous, he says good stuff, but the good stuff doesn't make it to the socials because that's not what gets people talking. So
that's true. Yeah, and again, I'm a huge fan. I love listening to David King, because I think he does such a great job of explaining things, and he's very level with it and that sort of thing. I really enjoy listening to him when I get the opportunity to do so.
Well, them two together, in my opinion, if you want genuine footy conversation, so we've got a lot of Triple M content, and I grew up with Triple M, with Rush Hour and all those, which is light-hearted look at sport, fantastic, great. I think David King and Kane Cornes are the best pairing on footy radio to talk about footy, because even if they're saying the most ridiculous things, it's still worth listening to. And I think that's key. I genuinely believe that every time you're in front of a microphone or you're in front of a camera, is you need to be talking about things or raising questions that the people listening can answer. And that's what will keep them coming back. So I think they do a magnificent job, and it's not necessarily must listen, because I can understand everyone that brings up negative points. I'm not saying they're wrong or anything, but for someone who's a footy nuffy, whether I agree with them or not, they're excellent to listen to, in my opinion.
So, what kind of the reason we're looking at, that you and I are chatting today is how can we, or, can we brainstorm ideas and at least, toss out ideas as to why American NFL fans or American sport fans would probably love Australian football. And I won't be so bold as to say the AFL, because again, that's the comp, it's not the game. But that's the one that's most prevalent that they're likely to be seeing. But how do we get them to check it out, and what could the competition do to help garner an interest, because my thesis has been that if we could figure out how to get 1% of the American population interested in footy, just 1%,
Mm.
that's 10% of Australia.
Yep.
If we could get 1% of this country going, damn, this is awesome. It could be an economics windfall to the comp. That can be used for, growing, the local game, helping to restore that after having been devastated by COVID, doing research for, player health and safety, growing adding in another club, the getting the 19th club into Tasmania, and then the 20th club wherever they're going to be putting it, because I'm sure once they get 19, they're going to want number 20, and people are talking about where should that one go? Is that I hear people joking, are they going to put a third one in Perth, or are they going to get one up in Darwin? And again, you're going to have a very interesting stadium situation if you're going to have one in Darwin playing during that season, because otherwise, people are going to be running around with ice cubes in their shorts. I mean, it's gonna.
Yeah, can you have a roof on a stadium that could be 8 or 80 degrees? Is a very good question. Yeah, I think Darwin will be the 20th. I think. Well, if the AFL won't do it, fans should, which is why I'm such a big fan of your operation and the way things are going. Having games over there would be fantastic, and I think it's on the AFL right now to spread it to the world, because even if the world says no. And I don't think the world would say no, especially in America, because you love your athletes to be, let's be honest, genetic freaks. Let's just call it
that's
as
a safe bet. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. You look. I know he's not American, but there's a reason why Giannis Antetokounmpo is the most marketable player in the NBA, or one of. And Joe Ingles isn't. And I love Joe Ingles. He's an Aussie boy. I love him, but he's white, 6'4". And he's just fantastic. He's a great player, but there's a reason why this 7'2" bloke who looks like he's chiseled out of stone,
right,
is the guy. And I think that the AFL are getting more and more of those players in there. I think the skill level is insane, and there has been a spike in the last couple of years of American YouTubers reacting to AFL and going, "This is great, this is great." Which is a fantastic way to do things, but it's got to start at the AFL. I think we need to get games into LA. We've got to get them into New York. And whether they're preseason games, there's not a lot that goes on in February at all. There's not a whole lot that goes on early March. There's one preseason game, great. But if we could get Port Adelaide and Gold Coast to China, I mean, surely we'd be able to get 2 clubs to LA. Give them the bye the next week and expose this game to an American audience. Surely you guys have got stadiums with 30 or 40,000 people.
Well, we were supposed to have, back in 2020 when COVID hit, there was supposed to be a game. GWS and Essendon were supposed to play here,
yes,
in the Los Angeles area for in a regular season game. I think it was the opening round they were supposed to be playing here. And that didn't come to fruition, and I was going to ask you, do you think we're going to, see an NFL game in Melbourne or Sydney before we see an AFL game here?
Yeah, well, 2024, the Rams are coming to Sydney. So
are they?
Yes, they are.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, the Rams. So we've got the London games, we've got the Germany games, and LA got Australia, and Sydney seems to be the point. It's not the home of sport. That would be Melbourne, but sure, Sydney, you can have this one. And I know I'll be heading up there, and Smithy and Teed will be coming as well. I'll drag them up there if I have to.
There you go.
to go watch an NFL game. So
road trip or a flight?
Or flight, yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's only an hour from Melbourne to Sydney, so whether I think it's 16 hours in the car, sounds about right. Insanely stupid big country we've got here.
It's similar to us, but you guys just have lots of areas where you're not going to see very many people for a couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, but on the east coast of Australia, you can drive 6 hours and still be in the same state. The east coast of America, there's points where I reckon you could get in the car, drive for 6 hours, and you're 2 states away.
Oh, you certainly can. Oh, absolutely can. You start in Maine, you go through New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. Yes, you can certainly do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, I think we are going to get an NFL game here in Australia first. But I think the AFL, if we're looking at expanding to different markets. I mean, America lead the world in, merchandising, as in marketing. The soccer probably has better actual merchandise numbers, but America's ability to latch onto an idea and create revenue through things like events. AFL doesn't have collector's cards anymore, where you look at rookie cards in the NBA and the NFL go for tons of money. So
right.
yeah, there are definitely markets in which the AFL need to approach America, and I still haven't met an American that isn't absolutely gobsmacked at the game. Whether they think it's good, bad, or whatever it is, all it takes is a little highlight, and it's just the questions come flying. So
right, and it's just
I hope we can get back there.
And I just hope we can get and I've seen some of the reaction videos and such, and those are great, but there's never a follow up with that. There's never it's like, wow, look at he jumped on him. Oh, look at him. I bet that was a concussion. And then you move on to the next thing you're reacting to. It's like, wow, look at this lizard eating bugs or whatever it happens to be they're looking at. And and it's I think we are and again there's 50 teams in the USAFL that are playing here, and that league's been around for 25 years here in the States. Wow. So there's several thousand people here, and they're trying to get it up over 5,000 in the next year or two. That was a big push that they had, because I know that they had a big program going called Footy 5,000, where they're trying to get like 5,000 people playing the game across the country. And people who were involved in that were saying, well, they had like 3,000 people just in the Dallas area who play rugby.
Wow.
It's so that and I think that's one of the issues is, of course, trying to find if you're going to try to play the regular game with the 18 on the side on on an oval that's as big as it is, it's hard to find a space that size. Because I talked to somebody last night who plays for the team in Los Angeles, and as he said that you'd think for a town the size of Los Angeles that they have more parks that would have a large enough space for us to actually go and be able to sign to rent or sign out and reserve and be able to practice and play on there. So, but they have a hard time finding a ground to go play on. So it's just I just think that it's a really well kept secret, and there've been those reaction things, but it's just, how do we just get the damn door kicked in and just tell people this thing how wonderful it is? Because I talk to more people about footy than I do about anything else, which means I don't talk to my family much because they don't give a damn about footy. Not a one of them. I mean, I tried. My wife became a baseball fan about specific players because she thought some of them were cute. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and use that approach. So I found a couple of articles from a few years back where some of the clubs were doing their beach training, and one of them happened to be the day that Hawthorne had gone to the beach. And there's Jager O'Meara training on the beach in his budgie smuggler, and I'm comfortable enough to say that is one hell of a handsome man right there. And so I sent these articles to her, and I thought, they don't wear much more than this when they're actually playing the game. And well, they do put a shirt on, but the shorts kind of similar. Didn't make a difference for her, but
yeah, it's a lost cause. If Jaeger's not converting it, I think that's a lost cause.
It's not like I was, and again, this is with tongue planted firmly in cheek. It's not like I was sending beach training photos of Max Gawn, or.
Shout out Max here. He's a really good bloke too. But
I'm sure I know he is, but but if you were putting together your top 10 most handsome AFL players, I'm not sure he's on the list.
It might not make the top 10, Max.
Yes, I mean I'm thinking O'Meara is probably there. Brody Grundy's probably there. So we at least got a Melbourne Ruck on there. But
you never know. You never know. I mean, my beautiful partner's a Richmond girl, but we went and watched Hawthorn train at the local university because the training ground's being resurfaced, and training finished up. She's always had a bit of a crush on John Newcomb, who's a ripping bloke. We sponsor him at Talking Hawks, the other alternative media brand I work for. Can you tell I hate being bored?
Well, I'm actually going to be talking to them soon. I think we just haven't nailed down a time yet.
Yeah, beautiful. Hopefully it'll be with Matt. He's a star. And so we're walking to do just a little video on, the key takeaways from training.
Mm-hmm.
Jai walks past us. He doesn't have a shirt on, and I'm just going to say this as politely as I can. I haven't made her blush like that before. So, sometimes you got to take the wins, I believe. And that's that one wasn't a win for Reese, unfortunately. But
So did you go ahead and get to the parking lot or wherever and just strip off your shirt for the drive home then? And
I did not. No one wants
okay.
that. That's I'm not here to compare myself. But the great man Smithy, who I've talked about a couple of times, his magnificent partners got a thing for Zach Tui, one of your boys.
Okay, is it the
Irishman.
mustache?
The mustache and the accent. So
yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
So just
okay.
I think. Maybe, if Jaeger's not the go, we might have to go down, the other end of the spectrum, whoever that may be, in terms of maybe someone a bit more rugged, mate.
Yeah, I
get the better half on board.
Yeah, I won't be doing that for the drive home either, even though I am, let's see, 18, 19 months now. There's almost 59 kilos less of me than there was in August of 2021.
Oh, wow.
So
congratulations, that's amazing.
I'm working at trying to disappear now, so I can, I can actually fit into this closet just fine now, and I don't have to leave it to change my mind. So it's, we have this huge country, and we are a sports crazy country. We've embraced watching. We have people getting up at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, Sunday mornings to watch European soccer.
Mm-hmm.
We're watching the NFL, college football, they're here in the US during the football season. Of course, the NFL games are typically on Sunday here, but Saturday is college football for the most part. And there are probably 60, 65 college football games televised every Saturday. I mean, it's huge. So, I mean, there is a thirst for this type of a competition, and it's just, footy is just such it's I think it's so much more three-dimensional than the NFL, than gridiron happens to be. So it's just I guess my big question then is how can we best market it here? How can we convince the AFL to plunk down that money? They spent money trying to get getting people to watch the game in China, to have Port Adelaide and Gold Coast there, and it's and I don't know, was that trying to pound the proverbial square peg into the round hole in that situation?
I can't answer that question. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me at the time, but I think I was 21 when they went the first time. No, it would have been 20 the first time I went. So, what does a 20-year-old know, seriously?
Yeah.
But even now, it still didn't make a whole lot of sense to me now. I don't know what impact that's had. I don't think much, to be perfectly honest. But I think the approach is threefold. I think we need to give America access to Friday night footy. So I know over there for you guys that would be Thursday, or Friday morning, depending on
Friday
the
morning,
time zone.
Yeah.
Friday morning, yeah. So I think that standalone game, because even if you have to start, sort of 30 years back. So 30 years ago in Australia, back when games were starting to be televised, a lot of people were only getting one game a weekend. So match of the day on the Saturday. If that's where we have to start with America, I mean, we've got to start somewhere. You got to walk before you run. We can't just assume that we're going to sprint into America, take it by storm, and everything's going to be perfect. So even if we start there, and I'm a big believer that the less competition for time, the better to start. So like you say, putting it in the middle of college football, I don't think is going to get fantastic traction. But, Friday night this year, I think round one's going to be Geelong and Collingwood.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. America's going to tune in and watch 80,000 people on a Friday morning go absolutely nuts for a game where they hit as hard as they do with no padding.
Right.
And the scoring's going to be higher than what they're used to in the NFL, so it's going to be fun to keep track of and all these things. But the other thing I think as well that's kind of going neglected at the moment is international memberships. So, of course, they are offered to international people. Of course, you get access to games. How that system works, I'm not 100% sure of, so I won't pretend that I know, but I definitely think there's. Yeah,
I know.
You'll be able to fill
Yeah.
me in, which will be great. But I think more work there is something that needs to be done, because it's we're in essence we're a big country in the bottom of the world, surrounded by not much. We've got to get that reach. We really do. So I think if we can entice international people to watch the game and get that sense of tribalism that they've got in the NFL, college football, NBA, NHL, MLB. If we can get that into America, I think once it starts, the snowball will be incredible. It's just, does the AFL want or have the resources to try and get that going? I hope the answer is yes, because in my very limited experience in exposing Americans to the game, they are dumbfounded on how this is actually a sport.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and we actually do, because I've had my international membership now for 4 years. I mean, I bought the Watch AFL app as a standalone for 2 years before I became an international member, because I didn't realize that was a thing. I hadn't figured that out yet, and I didn't realize that if you became an international member, you actually got the Watch AFL app as part of that, and it's actually cheaper to become an international member of your club. Of course, the first year it wasn't really until 2017, about halfway through the season, that I settled. I don't want to say settled on, that I chose to become a Cat supporter. So I watched for about a year and a half before I decided on that this is the club I wanted to support. I mean, I'd narrowed it down to 2 clubs before I made my ultimate decision. It was Geelong and Brisbane were the 2 that I'd narrowed it down to.
It's a good start. That's given what's going to happen in the next couple of years. Well, of course, you got your premiership, and Brisbane probably had, with Geelong, the best off season of all time. I mean, you did well to narrow it down to those 2.
Yeah, it was. My thinking was that I was, I thought, I wanted to support a club that was kind of not necessarily in a small town, but that was maybe away from the big hub that was of where the 9 clubs were in the major metropolitan areas, kind of, and then when I learned, I really figured out, that Ford was one of their big sponsors. I had between like a half dozen family members on my dad's side of the family. There's like almost 200 years of working at Ford. So that was kind of the thing that kind of really pushed me into that. Plus, one player that pushed me into the camp, and it's again, as you said, people wouldn't come up with how your name came about. Nikaya Kakatu was the player that pushed me into becoming a Cat supporter. Now he's with Brisbane. Yeah. So, but we get, once they actually get around to remembering, oh yeah, we need to sign the contract with the Fox Sports in America this year, because we didn't get any games until round 6 or 7 this last year on like regular, like what would you like be a K or like satellite television, that sort of thing. Because there's 2 channels, Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2. Usually will carry about 5 games each weekend, and then the other 4 will be on another pay service called Fox Soccer Plus. So they'll have all the games here, but they don't advertise it at all. There's nothing that says, hey, this great game is on. There's nothing that comes on at 8:00 in the evening here that says Geelong and Collingwood are going to be playing, tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. or at 5:50 a.m., whatever the time happens to be. Set your DVR, set your television recorder to record the game, because maybe you'll be up to watch it. I know damn well I will be, but I don't think you can expect the novice person watching the game to roll out of bed at 4:00 in the morning for a 4:30 first bounce. They're not going to do that. They're gonna look at you and think that you're on drugs.
Yeah.
But once you fall in love with the game, it's the same thing kind of that you have to deal with watching the NFL.
Yes.
Because because you're let me think, if it's 1:00, you're getting about 1:00 start kickoffs here. It's probably about the East Coast games like 5:00 in the morning there for you.
So we get 3 different times given the time of the year, because we got daylight savings and all those good old complicated things that the scientists tell us. So for the first 9 weeks of the year, it's 3 a.m. for the earlier games on Monday morning for us, and then we get about a month of 4 a.m. and then the rest of the season's 5.
Okay.
And so every second week, probably, I was waking up this year, especially if the Dolphins were on, and Smithy and Trav, who we call Teed, they're up every week. They've got Game Pass. They're your full on nuffies. They generally are, which is why I let them do most of the analysis, and I'm there to keep them on point and take the mickey a little bit, and then chime in with my 2 cents when I can. So yeah, I'm with you. It is going to be with the early wake up times. You are going to have to get the nuffies involved, but I know the AFL don't have the money, but geez, a Super Bowl ad. I mean, wouldn't that?
Yeah. That would be. Yes, it would be.
Wouldn't that just be the
That would be
perfect marketing tool if they had
that
the
would be an
coin?
absolute dream. And I don't even know who's covering the. I don't know which network here is doing the. I'm not sure if it's at Fox or is it. Fox is doing it. It's the same same company. It's Fox Sports. I mean, this is the Fox like television network, which is like one of the major ones that has like all the TV dramas and that sort of thing. It's the one that normally carries the game, so it's not a sports specific channel.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's a Fox Sports is kind of a cousin to it. I mean, they're kind of under the same umbrella. So and you're right. That would be extraordinarily expensive to put an ad on there. But even having the ads on Fox Sports 1 and 2 when they're showing other programming to promote their own programs on their own channels, I have never ever seen them. Not once. They don't exist. And I think that they're doing themselves a disservice. And I think I guess the AFL is going to sign the contract with them. They ought to say, you know what? Take a few seconds, put a commercial or two on, talk about the games that are there. And the pipe dream, while the commercial would be great, the pipe dream to me would be doing a weekly highlight show or a review show on a Wednesday evening at 8:00 in the evening, our time, where they talk about the games that had happened the week before, show some highlights, do a couple of interviews, maybe have a 5-minute segment where you look at the strategy of the game. Get to me that the way you can do that is get the camera that's above the post so you can see the entire oval, and you can show the strategy in terms of how people are flooding to different parts of the ground and that type of thing. And just I think if we're shown the game in that fashion, if people were to tune into that sort of thing, I think it would really they would grasp onto it, because
we've got the 2 hosts right here, mate. If they want to send me over to the US, I'll jump in the studio with you. Why not?
I mean, even doing it from from wherever. I mean, I wore a shirt and tie to school quite a bit. I could have kept my tie on today. I mean, it was one of my uncle's ties. It was probably a 50-year-old tie that I wore today. It was, I'd throw that thing back on again. I have no problem doing that. But you're right. It is just, I don't want to say it's a missed opportunity, but this I think could just be an absolute windfall for the it's almost one of those things where it kind of takes money to make money, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they might actually make it here if they were to do it. Because we did have when 2020 rolled around and the AFL was the only game being played in the world for a while. I mean, Eddie McGuire had a radio program here on satellite radio called Aussie Football Rules America.
Okay.
And he was doing like a weekly discussion about the game, and then they were doing one game where I believe they were doing which radio network is he more closely associated with? Is it SEN or is it Triple M? Okay, so they were doing the Triple M like rebroadcast of like the game of the week on there. But it's the radio. Yep. It's the radio, but they only did that for that one season when the games weren't on here, when there were nothing being played here.
Yeah.
So once everything came back, all the American sports are like, quit talking about that dumb game in Australia, because we're the ones paying your salaries here. We're the ones giving you billions of dollars, getting billions of dollars in advertising and stuff from you. So talk about our stuff. And I think that's what happened with Pat McAfee, who but I'm still blocked by him on Twitter. I have no idea how it happened, but I did manage to get blocked by him. But and maybe now that I think about it, he was really pimping footy quite a bit when it was the only game in town, and then once the game started back up here, he dropped it like a hot potato.
Yeah.
Because I think that the league's got in his ear and said, yeah, you may love that game, but that's not the one that's making your money for you. So stop talk about our stuff. And which was a darn shame.
Yeah, I think so. But you brought up an interesting point just before about the show, the media, how you could look at it. If we can divert from NFL for a second, I think if you could bring an AFL style of the NBA halftime shows that are around, so here on KO, so we get ESPN's broadcast of the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, not every game, a game or two a day sometimes, some days no games or whatever. But in the halftime show, effectively, from what I've seen, especially this season, I tend to watch a lot of Celtics games. I'm a Boston fan for free on some gambling sites, which have them for free. So there's a free hack for anyone there in Australia who doesn't want to pay the $200 for League Pass. But what I find so interesting is they'll look at the trends of the game in a halftime show. So we're only looking at 10 minutes here. They're looking at the trends of the game, a particular player, things like their shot maps. They've got the massive screen, kind of like your poster behind you, the premiership poster there behind you, there where they can watch, dissect, and still at the end of the day have their predictions, reactions, and all these sorts of things. I think the NBA halftime show would be a segue into doing 40 minutes a week. I don't think a show, say, like On the Couch here in Australia would work in America.
No, I don't think so yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure if four guys sitting on a couch and going, we think this, we think that, we think this, we think that, interview a player. I don't think that would go down well. But again, there's a reason why, the Herd, Undisputed, First Things First, these shows do so well is because it's people first, sports second, insanity third.
Yeah.
And that's the order that get mixed up, which I think I don't think we have the journalists or the media performers here that can go and do that, which is why I believe that the step in the door is fans. So one of the best things that I think the NBA do is they have effectively home court commentators. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm a I've pushed for this over my channel. We need that in the AFL, and I think that's how you can get the US market on board. So, I'll pick a team neither of us are involved in, right? We'll say Carlton. I think if Americans want to get around, say, the Carlton Football Club, I think it's going to be better for them if they do sit down and watch a game to have the game commentated by Carlton fans than it would be Australian commentators, because I think being as subjective as possible is great the more you love the game. Mm-hmm. But I think riding that wave of passion with guys that have emotional investment in the game would do the world of good. It's why watch-alongs and live streams on YouTube do really well here in Australia, because I think fans want passion. And we see it in the NFL, we see it in the NBA, and we don't see it enough, in my opinion, in the AFL on, say, a Friday night game, because the emotional investment there is they just want a good game rather than a particular team, which is why a lot of our commentators who are supposed to be subjective do find themselves being criticised if the game is, say, a 46-point blowout in the last quarter, wanting the other team to come back because they're wanting a better game rather than, if Carlton are up. Well, Carlton had it twice last year against Hawthorn and Port, so we'll use the Hawthorn game because why not? I'll put myself through that again. Two Carlton commentators who know what they're doing, that's got to be first and foremost, enjoying the wave of being up by 46 points at quarter time, and then having the dread in their voice as Hawthorn began to come back. And then we had that thrust forward. I think Jack Gunston, still hurts that he left, but that's not important, went forward. Jacob Wiedering took that mark. The ecstasy there and riding that wave to the siren, I think, is how we could get an American audience on board rather than have any two commentators that you want that get excited about moments, but maybe not particular players or teams to make people fall in love with the game, because that's not their job.
Well, which, I love the idea of what you're saying there, but because there's also, I think a lot of the commentators that are covering the game, yes, a lot of them are, they wear their hearts on their sleeve in a lot of instances there. But I do like how a number of them do try to explain things. I mean, like even halftime during like the Fox games where they'll go into the back into the studio and such, and they'll break down some video up on the board there as well. So I mean, I appreciate that as somebody who still is, I've not mastered the game. I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about the game. I'm not going to be that naive or that bold to say that because I don't. I'm still certainly learning about the game. And I agree with you that having somebody that can kind of explain the nuts and bolts and maybe, you know, weave in the stories and the tradition of a certain club while it's going on, but still, you know, call a good game. I think that's a great idea to do it that way. But
You know,
and
can
again,
you imagine getting 2 Collingwood supporters last year in that round 23 game against Carlton? Like, can you imagine them going off when Jamie Elliott blatantly ignores Jack Ginnivan on the inside, kicks the goal himself? They're up in arms. Carlton missed the finals by a point. You want Americans to fall in love with the Pies? Have 2 Pies fans go off their absolute nut at how great that was.
yes,
Might get a bit complicated towards finals because, you know, finals are finals. Even in the NBA finals, they try to keep it as subjective as possible. I fully understand that. But if we want to bring tribalism that America is so good at when it comes to their sports, I think that's the way you got to do it, because it's not like America can pick their city. It's not like, you know, a lot of Browns fans would be from Cleveland, a lot of Dolphins fans would be from Florida, yada, yada, yada. It's not like they can turn around and go, well, which team do we go for? Oh, we're not from Australia. We don't know much about Australia. They might know Melbourne and Sydney, and that's only 12 teams that you can pick, or 11 teams, 12 teams that you can pick from.
Right.
And that ostracizes the league. But if you do tune in and get some marketing there, and you do see, even if it's Adelaide Freo, right, which might be in Australia, would not get the coverage, especially here in Victoria.
Right.
That round one game last year, Adelaide Freo, which was a cracker, when Heath Chapman knocks that ball back in and saves the draw, they win by a point. You can't tell me that Americans wouldn't look at that and go, "What a game! What a call by these fans that are up and about." Of course, next week I want to see if the Dockers can do that again.
Yeah,
let's go, and then bam, they're hooked. They're in.
This is a fantastic point. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I was doing this, is to try to get people to think about, you know, outside the box. I think I think you're really onto something there, and it's you know, if they had like an alternative call for the game, you know, let the people who are calling the game in Australia for the Australian audience call the game for the Australian audience, but coming up with somebody that maybe would encourage engagement with the clubs, I think that's a good thing.
Because we look at it when Collingwood played Richmond, I think it might have been 2016. Someone will crucify me for getting the date wrong, but I'm confident then. We had press read for Ed, which was Eddie Maguire, as you're talking about, with Tony Shaw and a bunch of Collingwood guys. And the reason why that didn't take off in Australia is there were still media performers being biased, which is not really the way that I'm approaching this. You know, do we want Anthony Hudson doing Geelong games? Do we want James Brayshaw doing North Melbourne games? I would argue no. They're still the media performers. Let them be media performers. If it's up to the fans to bring the game, let the fans bring the game. So if it is up to us, then let's do it that way. I truly believe that you're not going to get addicted to a new sport. I grew up with footy. I was kind of forced into it. Mum was Collingwood, Dad's Hawthorn. It was, you know, one of those. Mum tried converting me. Mum and Dad had a bet one night on which team would win I would barrack for. Thank God the Hawks won that game, because I've seen more success than my mum has during our lifetime. So shout out to my old man for getting that done for me. But if you're going to get addicted to a new sport, I found this with the NFL. It wasn't until I found the team and found some emotional investment did the addiction begin to grow. And I think that's the way to do it. I really do. And then the AFL needs to...
That's a great point. I want to high five you there, but my arm's not quite long enough, so I'm just going to pretend that I am there. So, you know, somebody that let me toss this name out here and see if you think this is somebody who I think could, you know, who's recently retired from their craft. Maybe this person could even be the spearhead of this. And I'm just going to... What do you think about Daisy Pierce heading up the broadcasting of AFL games, like the AFL Game of the Week here in Australia? Because I love her work as the boundary writer, because she does a great job of explaining things. And I think once she gets the opportunity to spend more time up in the box actually calling games, I can't wait to see that, because I think she's phenomenal at what she does. And
yeah, I would love to know if that's what she wants to do. She's working with the Cats men's team this year, which will be great, and she does an extremely good job. I think she's informative. I think she does really well to keep up with some of the blokes that she works with, and that's no shade to them, but she's in an environment which has been, notoriously a boys' club for so long. If she wants to be a caller, then I think that would be fantastic. My instincts say that I don't think that she would, but what the hell do I know? I've never asked her. Not a bad name at all. I genuinely think that she is fantastic at what she does. I think that she would do a fantastic job as a part of the commentary team. Now, would that be the special comments that she does now? Because I think she's one of the best in the business. Absolutely. I have no idea whether she'd want to take that further, but I mean, we could be at a spot here. She could be a senior assistant coach at a footy club. Could she be the first female head coach of an AFL club? Definitely. So she might be overqualified for this job, actually, and,
good point.
Probably move on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, so it's not like why do you want to cut the rungs off the bottom of my ladder that I'm climbing here and make me step back down to that? Yeah, it's okay. So, but I think she'd be good at it. But it's you're right. I think she might just be overqualified for that. That's So So if they put you in charge, you've tossed out some great ideas here. Is there anything that we could do here in the U.S., do you think, to try to encourage the AFL to spend a little, not necessarily spend more money on us, but, be a little bit more persistent with the media at our end to try to promote their game?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, social media is a beautiful way of imparting this messaging. I have no idea of international memberships. I know us at Talking Hawks are doing what we can and trying to implement some programs into getting more Hawthorn international memberships. America is definitely the country that we're looking at first, along with the UK, and seeing what we can do in that space. But my instincts tell me that it's got to be going to the AFL with a plan rather than asking the AFL with a plan to come up with a plan themselves. I think going to get results quicker and more efficiently, and I think the manpower behind that is going to have to be vast, because it's going to have to take something pretty special, I think, to blow them away. And hopefully that Essendon GWS plan was not a one and done wrecked by COVID, because again, I think give them a chance and they'll fall in love. I really do. It's a fantastic game, and I think one that is extremely addictive to watch, to consume. And again, if it's driven by emotional fans, then Americans will jump on board. You're a passionate and a friendly bunch, and I love that about your country, and I hope I can visit it one day.
Well, I reciprocate that. I mean, I'm hoping to get over to Australia as well. So before we wrap up here, tell us where we can find all of the different things that you're involved with in terms of your different programs. I know you're with the Talking Hawks, and you're doing the NFL podcast and your footy YouTube channel as well. Tell us about where to find those, and where can we find you on social media and that type of thing.
Yeah, so the YouTube channel, Daz Talks Footy, you can just go there, subscribe. It's not blocked in any countries. There was a little bit of a kerfuffle about some sports content across. No, it's all good so far. So trying to hit 1,000 subscribers there before round one. Recently hit 800 and actually dropped a video today on whether Collingwood are contenders or pretenders in 2023. So that'll hopefully go well, so you can catch me there. Also on YouTube and on your favourite podcast platform, you can find Talking Hawks. So that is talking all things about Hawthorn, the most successful club in terms of premierships since 1960. So, hey, if you're looking to jump on, and the Hawks, we might not be going too well at the moment, but the rebuild under Sam Mitchell is going to be epic. So if you want to jump on board, you can do that. So we've got a YouTube channel all over the socials, so Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Talking Hawks, that's us. We just love the Hawks. We're a fan-passionate group that drives quality footy conversations. So we've got videos where we do fan live streams, player interviews, and a lot of draft content. on our YouTube, and for our podcast, we take 15 to 20 minutes just to talk about some topics that, probably aren't worthy of a 45-minute, hour-long fan live stream. So we do that there. And NFL Down Under on your favourite podcasting platform as well. Apple, Google, Spotify, a couple of others as well. I think Podbean as well, Podcorn have got us as well. So that's Smitty, Teed and I. We go through the games, our thoughts. We take the mickey a bit. We got some segments where I quiz the boys, test their knowledge, which is quite good. Smithy takes on Colin Cowherd in his betting segment every week and actually lost this year. So we haven't figured out a punishment for the great man yet. If anyone knows something that we could do, please.
So you guys have actually been engaging with Colin Cowherd to where he's...
Oh, no, we just take him on now. I don't think he knows we exist, which is unfortunate. I hope he does, which would be good. That'd be quite good on his show to give us a shout out. So yeah, I've got a lot of eggs in a lot of baskets at the moment, but this media dream of mine has been for a while, and I chase some others in terms of hospitality, and I've got an education job at the moment right now, which I love, don't get me wrong, but the media dream is real, and who knows, maybe I can bring the Hawks to America, which would be quite cool under our completely biased commentary, because it's something I want to bring to Talking Hawks as well. If we can bring, and I hate to do this to a Geelong fan, but if we could sit down, two or three of us, and commentate the 2008 grand final as biased as we can, I think that's something fans would really, really enjoy. So that was actually the basis of sort of this conversation here about the biased commentary. But I'll stop rambling now. So
I'm looking up at the premiership posters right above my head, and there's the 2007 one and the 2009 one. But you're right, the 2008 one does not exist up there.
No, we got the chocolates over you that day, and for 10-year-old me, my goodness, that was exciting. So, Talking Hawks YouTube podcast, NFL Down Under podcast, and Daz Talks Footy on YouTube, or if you want to find me on Twitter, where I talk sport, a whole lot of nonsense stories from the town that I live in, because it's a rough one, and I love it. I love the people. You can find me on Twitter at ReeseKnight8. I have no idea what the 8 stands for. Twitter just gave me it, and I ran with it. So that's me.
There's 7 other Reese Knights ahead of you then.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm 8th in line, hoping to work my way up in the years to come.
Well, or are you possibly related to Henry VIII?
And I mean, given his history, I hope not.
Yes, that's true. Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, that's true. Yes. You don't have any kids yet, do you?
No, 24. Okay. Still 24, so just building the empire first, and my beautiful part. If I can plug my beautiful partner's business as well. So if you listening to this,
absolutely.
If you're listening to this in Victoria, Melbourne, wherever you may be in this beautiful state of ours, and you need a sweet treat for any occasion, custom cakes, cookies, cupcakes, you can tell that I'm a big boy for that reason. I am trying to get the weight off, but she keeps sucking me back in with these desserts. You can find Sammy Sweets on Facebook and Instagram as well. She does a fantastic job. We can deliver on site, whether it's for a wedding, birthday, or just to cheer up a friend. You can find her there, and she does a magnificent job in our home registered kitchen.
Fantastic. Well, Reese, I appreciate you taking time out of your Saturday afternoon, sir. This was a lot of fun. I love the idea about the impassioned supporters doing the games. I think that the league would have to figure out how to make that work. And maybe, and I don't know, would they maybe do them as a replay and have them maybe air at in what would be prime time here? I mean, I don't know
fantastic
if they could, because what we get here on those channels far too often is we get 10-year-old Texas Hold'em poker tournaments, or the best of UFC knockouts number 47. It's just they're not very inventive when it comes to filling their airtime with there aren't live games on for them.
Yeah, I think replaying the game, I think finding that time would be excellent, because I think America is ready to take on a sport that is just, to quote my great friend Melissa, who lives in Idaho, completely batshit, if I'm allowed to say that on the pod. That's what she calls it, and it's a perfect summation. It is. It's great. It's fantastic. Pick a team, enjoy the ride, and it works a lot like any other sports. We've got the draft, free agency. It doesn't work any differently in the off season. It's just when they cross that white line, prepare for chaos.
Yes, and the off season is unique because that's the only trade period that there is. I mean, there is, for those of us following sports here in the U.S., there's always that mid-season trade period, which I know gets debated and discussed in the AFL. And there's some people who are purists that think, no way, we should never do it. And there are others that are saying, why not allow a club to accelerate their rebuild? If you've got, and I'm going to use as an example here before we go, the last couple of years, if he would have wanted to do it, a Todd Goldstein, if a club was seeking a ruck, and a club was willing to say, you know what, we think a ruck of his caliber could put us through the finals. So we'd be willing to give up maybe a second and third round pick to your club to have him for the last 12 games of this season because he'd help us through the finals. Now, and again, I know there's a lot of things that would need to be worked through as far as that goes, because the clubs are, the relationship between the fans and the clubs and the players is in footy is significantly different than clubs sports here. It's,
I think you'd have to guarantee things like housing and school placement if you're going to do that kind of trade period, especially in Australia, just because the season it's such a delicately strange fixture that we've got. So you think the NBA 82 games, you're thinking that's crazy, but it's over in a matter of a similar time frame than the footy. Whereas you've got your 6 day build up to a game, so that's 6 days a week that you're away. So plenty of stipulations to get through. But I love the idea, the fact that I look at a St Kilda. If Jade Gresham, I don't know why he's the player that comes to mind, but I'll go with it. If he starts this year like a house on fire and say there's a contender that really, really needs that high half forward, the Saints would take a first-round pick for Jay Gresham any day of the week. If someone wanted to do that mid-year, awesome. If they get to round 14 for the Saints and he gets injured, they probably have to keep him as a free agent. So I'm all for it, personally.
That's a great point. Well, Reese, man, you have a great afternoon, sir. All the best to your wife and her baking business. I will look at pictures on the Facebook page. I won't be trying any of them because I haven't had cookies or cake in a while. And while I may miss them, I like being able to see my toes.
Yeah, I like it. When you eventually come down to Melbourne, mate, you'll have to spoil yourself. We'll bring you something.
I first thing I have to do though is I have to have a meat pie.
Yeah,
I have to do that first. I mean, I have, and I love telling people this, since I first tried Vegemite in June of 2021, I have gone through 17 jars.
Wow.
Yeah. Absolutely
just
love
stop
it.
eating them, dear America. Stop eating Vegemite by the spoonful. It's literally like a quarter of a teaspoon on some buttered toast. That's the perfect amount.
I don't eat it by the spoonful, but I don't even use the butter anymore. I just use just straight Vegemite.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
I like it.
Yes. So I mean, I have my reserve jars up here. I've got three in reserve up here, and I've got one that's open. And I had somebody send me the squeezy kind that I haven't tried yet. I haven't opened that one up yet. But yeah, I've got like 15 empty jars in a little box that I'm keeping. I'm just going to make a pyramid out of them, and maybe Vegemite. I'm following them on Twitter, and anytime Vegemite posts anything on Twitter, I always respond, because if they want an American ambassador for it, I am their guy. Okay, I am it. I would proudly be their ambassador, and I would work for cheap. I would work for an ad or two on the podcast, and I would work for 2 jars a month would be sufficient for me. I want
Vegemite. That's just good business.
You can't get any cheaper than that. You can't get cheaper than that. Well, hey man, have a great afternoon. Okay, I don't want to keep you any longer. No worries at all. It's been absolutely a pleasure to talk to you. This has been a great deal of fun, man.
No, pleasure was mine. Thank you very much.
Cheers. All right, Reese. Hey, thanks so very much, man, for taking time to sit down and chat with me. I do appreciate your insight and helping to encourage my fellow Yanks to check out the AFL. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to get some traction with these things and actually draw in a bit of a crowd. And I'm really, really looking forward to that. So I appreciate all the help that you're giving. Now, I do want to share before I wrap up here, and I've not done this as of yet, but The games that are being played here on television in the United States coming up in the first 3 rounds are posted on the afana.com website, and I think I'll have that one linked in my show notes. It's afana.com. It's the Australian Football Association of North America, and they do a fantastic job keeping people up to speed with the game here in the U.S., but then they also do a lot of work behind the scenes, tracking down television schedules and that type of thing to let us know when the games are going to be played. But there are going to be 3 games on during round 1 in the first round of footy coming up here, and the first one being on the 17th of March. And these 3 games are all going to be on FS2. And of course, if you're listening to this, you should know, if you haven't figured it out already, that Kyrie was wrong, and we don't necessarily live on a flat planet. So Australia is many, many time zones ahead of us. Of course, we have our clocks being set forward here in the United States soon. But next Friday morning on FS2, beginning at 4:30, the Geelong Cats, the reigning premiers, are facing off against Collingwood. And that's a Geelong home game, but they're playing that at Collingwood's stadium, the MCG. It seats more people. If you're becoming a fan of This Is an American, that's one of those things you'll have to wrap your head around. Sometimes the teams that play in smaller grounds get to play their home games at the other team's stadium. It happens. It works. They make it work. Not a real big deal anymore. Then on, and again, this is all from the afana.com website, on Saturday, the 18th of March at 4 a.m., the Melbourne Demons and the Western Bulldogs are going to be playing. And then on Sunday the 19th at midnight, so Saturday night into Sunday, the Hawthorn Hawks and the Essendon Bombers are going to be facing off. And the Hawks are a club that some people are tipping or predicting are going to finish towards the bottom of the standings or the ladder this year. But they are an up-and-coming side. They've got some really good young talent. Essendon is a club that is a bit of an enigma. They've got a lot of talent, but sometimes they can't always get the all of the horses in front of the buggy lined up to pull in the same direction. If they do, they've got a very talented side. So if you're interested in checking out those games and you're here in the U.S., I strongly encourage you to set your DVR and listen to, and look at them the following morning. Now, because you're not likely to be staying up overnight to watch a game that you're not familiar with. But if you get up and you sit down with your coffee on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning or a Saturday evening, whatever the case may be, you might find that you actually love this game because it is dynamic. It's one of the fastest games out there. The endurance, the just athleticism with the players is something that not many people get to see. But again, there are going to also be 5 games in round 2 and 3 games in round 3 that will all be live. And those are on FS1 and FS2. In fact, most of them are on FS2 with the exception of one game that's going to be on FS1. There's one round 2 game on FS1, but the rest will all be on FS2. So if you set your DVR on FS2, you're probably going to catch the games there. And, if you follow the podcast, we do talk about when those games are going to be broadcast during the preview episodes here. If you are an NFL fan who has an interest in checking out this game and you want to talk about it and you want to learn about it, please reach out to me. Head over to my website at yankonthefooty.com and register as a guest. Drop me a note by email at yankonthefooty@gmail.com, or you can leave me a message over on my website as well. You can find me on all my socials. You can click on the website and scroll down all the way to the bottom. There'll be my picture down there in the bottom. There are links to all of my socials at Yank_on for Twitter, a Yank on the Footy podcast on Facebook, a Yank on the Footy on Instagram. You can find my name, Craig Wessels, on LinkedIn as well as on Facebook as well if you want to find me there. I do hope you'll reach out. If you like the show, if you've been listening for a while, or even if you're new, I do hope you'll consider heading over to my website and leaving a review. It's a huge help to give the podcast a little bit of credibility. If people are sharing their true feelings about the show, I'd greatly appreciate that. Would be awesome. Also, if you want to get on the mailing list, so when new episodes are released, they'll be in your inbox about 45 seconds after they come out. And if you want to also help out the show financially and keep it up and running and keep the lights on, because it does take some resources to keep this thing humming along here. And again, I'm a one-man band doing this all by myself, all my editing and all my website work and that type of thing. So if you want to help out the podcast, you certainly can do that. You can click on that Buy Me a Coffee button, the little yellow button in the bottom left-hand corner of my website, or you can check out my store page on Redbubble and pick up a sticker or a T-shirt if you want to do that. So if you've got an idea for a great guest, please reach out to me. I always am looking for guests, and love talking to people who are involved with the different clubs and unique stories and things of that nature. But before we go, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you check up on your friends. Let them know how you're doing. If you need to talk to somebody, reach out to somebody. Don't think that you can, or that you have to deal with whatever issues you may have all by yourself. There are people to talk to. Your friends will talk to you as well. And let them know you're okay. I have in my classroom several hundred quotations hanging up on the walls, and amongst those is one that's up in the front, right in the center, that looks unlike any of the other ones. And it's an Oscar Wilde quote. And it's one that I have high school students, mainly 16, 17-year-olds. And the quotation from Oscar Wilde says, "True friends stab you in the front." If you have something you need to talk to somebody about, your dear friends will be there for you. They absolutely will be there for you. So don't hesitate to reach out. I also have the numbers for things like Beyond Blue in the show notes as well, so you can check those out there as well. Ladies and gentlemen, check out each other, check on each other, that sort of thing. If you're new, I close out the episodes the same way every single time, and this is where I'm going to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I will catch you later. And this has been episode 244 of A Yank on the Footy. Again, don't forget that you can reach me at yankonthefooty@gmail.com or at my website, yankonthefooty.com, at Yank_on Twitter, a Yank on the Footy podcast on Facebook, and Yank on the Footy on Instagram. Those used to be the same, but my Facebook page disappeared about a year ago, so I had to change up the podcast name on Facebook. I appreciate you listening. I do hope you'll share the episode with your friends and family. And we're talking about two fantastic games here, Gridiron and the AFL, and there can be a wonderful symbiotic relationship. Until next time, everybody, goodbye.